more news about our position on corruption today. Transparency International releasing its Corruption Perceptions Index. It says that we as a country are now ranked as number 70 out of 180 countries. Melusi Ncala is from Corruption Watch. Melusi, good afternoon to you. How do you view this finding by Transparency International? It seems to show we're not making, well, it looks like we're not making any progress in fighting corruption, and that's probably because I don't know if we are making progress in fighting corruption.
Hi, Stephen, and hi to your viewers, and thank you for having us today. Yes, you've summarized it quite aptly. At least in the last 10 years, South Africa hasn't made any significant gains when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index. And just to highlight, the highest score that we've ever had was 45, and this was in 2016, whilst the lowest was 42. And since then, we've just been hovering over the 43 and 44 mark. This is just indicates that, that there's no accountability, despite though many would argue that we do have laws in place to fight against corruption.
So there's a very interesting thing that's happened. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a process which I think is possibly unique, well, in democracies around the world, where we had a commission of inquiry, the Zondo Commission, which in reality became about the governance of the governing party. And we saw all of that evidence in public. I think some people might say that's an argument to suggest that actually we became more transparent in some ways. I mean, how do you view that argument? I mean, we've seen it all in front of us.
Yes, no, I mean, it's definitely a step in the right direction, transparency. A great deal of work has been done highlighting corruption, not only through the commissions, but, we've had some of the commissions looking at SOEs, telling us about the irregularities or the corruption trends happening there and all the kind of governance issues. And that's first and foremost the first, well, at least the most important thing that we need to call for, this transparency. But that said, we can't forget that, we don't treat whistleblowers in the manner that is deserving of, to illustrate at least that, we do care about them and we regard the information that they give us as important, because whistleblowers are still under threat. They're not really supported financially. There's no mental support, and neither is there, actually there's little legal support for whistleblowers. So as much as we can celebrate the transparency, we also need to guard against certain behaviors.
There's also a huge issue about these recommendations from the Zondo Commission about whether they're actually going to be implemented. I mean, it is the same with the Special Investigating Unit. They've done their work. We see the number of cases that need to be referred to the NPA, but it keeps boiling down to the same issue. Will we see prosecutions? It takes us back to the National Prosecuting Authority.
Yes, governments to show that they indeed have appetite for at least holding people accountable and not just paying lip service to some of these issues that we are facing as a country. This is what people are mostly sick and tired of, that, yes, we know where the corruption is happening and we know at least some of the accused people, but when are we going to see them actually appearing in our courts and being held accountable? So in this respect, at least in as far as these commissions go, especially the Zondo one, questions need to be asked of government to say that following at least the first volume of the commission, what steps are they going to take to address some of the systemic issues, not necessarily the granular details, but the systemic issues, because there are certain things that they need to do to overhaul governance issues.
And I mean, again, I hate to sort of, put pressure on the NPA. Actually, I don't really hate to put pressure on the NPA because I don't believe for a second that they're doing nothing. I mean, they must be doing something. The Hawks, I hope, are doing something. But if they don't say publicly what they are doing, people are going to believe they are doing nothing. I mean, I worry, Melusi, that people just have despair, that they actually are giving up hope. They're giving up completely on whether there will be prosecutions.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the best gauge, at least what we have for now in terms of public perception or the general public's perception, are indexes such as the Global Corruption Barometer or some of the perception surveys that we run at Corruption Watch, and they indicate that people are distrustful of institutions, key institutions, including the police and parliamentarians. So, it leaves one thinking, are they perhaps not doing enough to communicate their efforts in curbing corruption and crime?
Within all of this, there's also about changing the culture. People become used to corruption. I mean, where do we start, for example, to improve our standing on this list, on this, Transparency International list? Prosecutions are one thing. It's also about changing the culture so that people don't accept corruption. If a police officer says, I'll let you off the speeding fine, you say, no, you won't.
Yes, I mean, there are several things that we can take into account when we want to change at least our behaviors in relation to us being viewed as a corrupt nation. As far as the CPI is concerned, some of the recommendations involved, because they make a big link between corruption as well as the abuse of human rights and the demise of democratic processes and institutions. And so we need to be watchful and wary of that as a people to say what's happening to our institutions and how do we call out or at least address human rights violations. And then we need to continue to ask for transparency when it comes to issues of procurement to make sure that issues relating to who gets tenders, how do they get these tenders, are they the right people to get these tenders, and are they actually giving us the goods and services that we need. We need to also follow up on that and call for transparency in that respect.
Melusi Ncala, thank you from Corruption Watch. Really do appreciate the time.